Well, hello guys and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we will create the guess number game, so let's get into it. I created a new project, as you can see, main window, and this main window is it's just completely empty, and let's define some elements. So first of all, in here I will call this one guess number, and I will keep the width and the height the same. And inside here, what we like to do, well, you probably know the guess number game, right? You have a interval of number, so for example from 0 to 100, and you have like 10 guesses, and you would like to guess a number between that character, right? A random number. So we will generate a random number inside here, and then the user will guess it. Okay, so in order to do that, we would like to have some two labels inside here which will define the interval, right? So for example from 0 to 100, and then we would like to have a input that where the user gets the number, okay? And then we would like to have another label where we print out how many guesses the user have, okay? So let's do that. Simply in here write label, and this one will have the content equal to, we start from 0, okay? And let's also play with the font size. Let's make it a big, so 40, and yeah, let's also define the margin with 100, and let's change it inside here, so maybe something like this. Yeah, and move it a bit lower. Yeah, whatever. Simply right now we can copy paste it. So if you click on here and click on Ctrl C and Ctrl V, it will copy paste the whole element. Cool, right? So right now we can change the content to 100 because we are guessing to 100, and I will move the element somewhere in here. Let's say in here. Cool. So I can make it a bit bigger. And yeah, so right now what we would like to do is define the text box. Oh, sorry. The text box. So text box, and in here we write the text. So what will be in the text box? Well, let's say a question mark. Let's close the tag, and let's also define the margin, and let's say 100 from the beginning, and right now we can style it, so maybe like this, and let's put it between these two numbers. And let's also change the font size, so font size, and let's set it also to 40, and let's change the alignments, right? So text alignment, and let's set it to center. Cool. So right now we have a text box, we have two labels where we can write the interval where the user is guessing, and we would like to have another label for the remaining lives, right? So we will create a new label. I'll just copy paste it and move it up here where it will say something like remaining lives. Right, and let's make this smaller, so 20. Let's make it this one bigger, like this, and let's also change the color. So for example, let's say that it will have 10 lives from the beginning, okay? And let's change the color. So in order to change the color, we use the foreground property. So foreground. And right now we can define a color inside here, so let's say it will be a, I don't know, something like green, okay? And then when the remaining lives gets under 3 or maybe equal to 3, we would change the text to red, okay, the color to red, so that user knows that he is close to losing. But first of all, we need to define the names of these, right? So we would like the name of the label. This one will be called label from. The second one will be label 2. Okay, so name equals label 2. and this one will be how do we want to call this label? Status. Okay, so yeah, and also we need to add a name to the text box, so name, and this will be a text box input. Okay, cool. So right now we can use all of these elements in our application. So let's do that. Simply inside, well, first of all, we would like to trigger a event, right? And right now it would be like bad for user to use a button and like always type something and then use a button. We would like to guess on enter, right? So user write, for example, 50 and hits enter. Okay, this will be better, right? So we can define a event in the text box, and this event can be called, it's not can be called, key down. Okay, so key down event basically means when user writes something, some character inside this box, the handler will be called, and we can define new event handler right here. So if I click on that, it will create a new method inside this class. Okay, so inside this code file. Cool. And when user writes some character, this one will be called, with the object sender being equal to this input, and in this arguments we will have also the character that is being pressed. So right now inside here we would like to check if, first of all, we'll define a lives, right? So we'll define a private integer variable called lives, and in here we will keep the lives remaining, right? So we can check inside here whether user still can win, right? If he still have a guesses. So if this is greater than, well, if it is equal to 0, we would like to return, right? We can also set the labels to something like you lose, maybe. Yeah, so this one will say you and this one will say lose. Cool. So I think it was labeled from, and we set the content property to you, and the label 2 will also have the content property equal to lose, right? Cool. So when life is equal to 0, user ran out of guesses. And right now we need to also check whether he is actually guessing or whether he is still writing a number. So we would like to check whether the character, whether the key that is being pressed on the keyboard is actually a enter. So in order to do that, we can write if e dot, and in here is the key. So this argument keeps the information about what key was actually pressed, and we can check whether it is equal to the enter key, right? So key dot enter. This basically represents some number representation of the enter on your keyboard, and if they are equal, that means user is guessing some number. So what we want to do, well, we would like to first of all check whether we would like to first of all decrement the number of lives, right? Because he just guessed. So we say lives minus minus. Okay. Then what we would like to do is we would like to check whether the number he guessed is smaller than or equal to the random number. And in order to do that, we first of all need to define the random number. And in order to do that, I will define a variable, the global variable, so it will be seen throughout this whole scope, and it will be an integer variable called random. And I'll set it to 0 from the beginning. And then I would like to use this main window method. And what it does, well, first of all, it is called when you run the application. It initializes all the components, so all of these elements is being initialized, it's being drawn by this method, okay? And this is similar to the main function in the console application, so this gets to call when your program starts. And inside here we would like to get a new random number, and in order to do that we can use the random class. So for example, random rnd will be equal to new random, so this is a object, and we can use a method that is being defined in here to generate a random number. So inside here we can set the random, that is this one, to the result of the rnd dot next. So this next method is returning some integer, some random integer value, right? And we would like this value to be equal to between values 0 and 100. And in order to do that, we can use the modulo operation, which is defined as this percentage sign and percentage 100. So even though this number will be something like 10,000 and something, using this modulo operation we will get a random number that is within a range from 0 to 100. Cool. So these two lines is basically how we get the random number, and we cannot change the random number throughout the game, so that is why we need to initialize the random number inside here and then keep the random number same throughout this whole program. Okay, cool. So right now what we can do is inside here check whether the value that is in the text box, in this one, so text box input, is being equal to the random number, so to the number that we have in this variable. So in order to do that we use the if condition, and inside here we would like to get first of all the guest number, right? So int, let's call this one user guest. So this will be the number from the text box, and I already talked about how to get a input from a text box, so I'll just simply write it integer parse the text box value, right? So text input dot text. Cool. So this line will get the input from user and store it into this variable, and then we can check whether it is, first of all we can check whether it is equal to the random, right? So if it is equal to the random number, the user wins. So let's once again change these two so that it will look like you win. Okay, so in the label from will be you, and in the label to will be win. And yeah, and we can return, because we can just return away from this function because we don't need the code underneath to be executed. Okay, and so if it is not equal, it must be smaller or bigger, right? So in here we will check for it. So if the number that he guessed is smaller than the random number, we know that the random number must be within the range of the guessed number and this number, right? So we would like to change the value of this label so that the user have a smaller interval he is guessing. Okay, so let's do that. Simply write label from dot content will be equal to the number that user guessed, so like this. And that means, for example, user writes 50, the random number will be 80. 50 is smaller than 80, so we will set this to 50, right? So then he will guess from 50 to 100. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And if it is not smaller, it must be greater, right? So there is no point in writing like else if. We can simply use the else branch because we know there is no other choice, okay? And inside here, we can write label2 dot content will be equal to the user guessed, because when we get to this branch, to this else branch, we know that the guessed number is being greater than the random number, so it's bigger. So we need to change this upper bound, okay? Cool. So right now, what we have? Well, actually, let me run the application and see what we got. It's still not working because we need to change the remaining lives, right? But let me just check on that. So if I write 50, it says 50 in here. If I write 25, it changed 25. So right now I know it's between 25 and 50. So cool, this is working, right? So I can just close the app. And yeah, so the thing that doesn't work is this thing, right? We don't change the value of this label box, even though we are guessing. So we would definitely like to change it. And in order to do that, we can do it inside here. So underneath, we simply set the label status, I think, and the content to the string that is remaining lives, and then the number of remaining lives. So remaining lives and the number of remaining lives, and that is stored in this lives variable. So cool, right now this is also working, and we would also like to change the color, right? So inside here we would like to change the color of this to red when the number of lives is smaller or equal to 3. So inside here we will check whether the lives is smaller or equal to 3, and if it is smaller or equal to 3, we would like to change the color. So we would like to change the foreground property, right? Foreground property. And in order to do that, we need to define a new solid color brush, which is just a color definition. You can think of it as a color definition. And inside here we will also create a new color, and it will be from, yeah, I'm not sure whether I can write it like this. So 255 0 and 0. I cannot. Okay, so let me define a new variable called color, and it will be just temporary, and I will create a, well, it is like this color from, yeah, okay, so I made a mistake in there, sorry. Inside here we don't write new color, we write color dot from, and inside here we want the RGB. And you probably heard about the RGB model. It's like the first number is representing how much of the red color we want in the final color, the second represents how much of the green color we want in the final color, and the last one represents how much of the blue color. And so this will create a new color, and this will basically make the data type equal to the foreground data type, okay? So yeah, I don't worry if you don't understand exactly what is happening on this line. It's just a way of creating a new color, okay? So if I run this app right now, as you can see, it says remaining lives 10, 0, 100. So if I change this and write in here 50, it says remaining lives 9, and I'm guessing from 0 to 50. Cool. So if I change it to 25, remaining lives is 8, and this interval also changes. So if I change this 38, also works. And let's make this one, for example, 45. Yeah, 48. Okay, so I'm getting closer. And 47, and I won, right? So the random number was actually 47, and I didn't figure out whether the lives changed, whether this color changed. So I will close the app and run it again, and inside here I will just guess the same number several times. So I'm still hitting the enter button, and right now it changes to red. Okay, so this is also cool. We let the user know that he have only a few lives remaining. And yeah, so let's also change the size of the grid so that it looks a bit better. So inside this file we write in here the width, and we set it to a 528, the 25, and the height, and we set it to 320. So if I run this right now, it should look a bit better. Yeah, it does. Right, so yeah, this is pretty much it for this lecture. This video is part of my Udemy course. If you are interested about it, make sure to go check it out. I'll leave a discount link in the description of this video.